First day of South by Southwest 2024, and happy International Women's Day. So we are going to talk about aliens, and we're going to talk about the search for aliens and what we're going to tell them. And the reason we have this session at South by Southwest is because the search for alien is accelerating with new technology, AI, powerful internet, computers, and so on. What people do now in searching alien in one night is what people used to do in a year or two in the 90s. So we believe we are on the verge of finding maybe an extraterrestrial civilization, or signals at least, and that's the reason we invited today two scientists, two renowned scientists working in the field of SETI, and one artist to tell us what they think we should do after finding alien signals. So let me introduce them. So first of all, my name is Franck Marchis. I'm a researcher at the SETI Institute and also a scientist at Unistellar, a company that develops telescopes. We have with us today Wael Farah. Hello, Wael. Wael from Lebanon to Australia. Wael has been traveling around the world, and his journey has been about astrophysics, solving the mystery of fast radio bursts. But he joined us recently at the SETI Institute, and your title, I don't have it here, but you're a researcher at the SETI Institute, and you're basically the leader of the Alien Telescope Array that you're going to talk about today. On the right, we have Shelley Wright. Hello, Shelley. Shelley is a galactic detective. She's a professor at UC San Diego. We know each other for quite a long time. She loves gadgets, very cool gadgets to find about the mystery of the universe. She's developed instruments to hunt for galaxies, black holes, making stars clearer using technology like adaptive optics. And when she's not teaching, she's also a SETI investigator, and she has her own lab on this topic. And we're going to talk about how she's doing cosmic espionage. And on my right here, Daniela. Hello, Daniela. Daniela DePaulis. She used to be a contemporary dancer. Now she's a cosmic artist and a SETI pioneer. Daniela still dances, but she dances now between arts and the stars. She has developed multiple projects in the field of astronomy, exploring space in every sense. And she's going to talk about one of these projects that we did last year together called The Sign in Space. Thank you very much for all of you for being here and telling us about your thought on this important topic. So let's start with you. I asked each of them to give us a very short presentation and to tell us who they are and what they do, first of all. Go ahead, Wael.
Sounds good. Thank you, Franck. So as Franck said, my name is Wael. I'm the project scientist for the Allen Telescope Array. The Allen Telescope Array is the telescope that you see right now on the screen. This is the telescope that was built from the ground up for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And I'll talk slightly about this. My role as a project scientist is to make sure that scientists and engineers can talk to each other, because that's a rule of physics nowadays, that those two population of people don't really know how to talk to each other. And so my role is trying to foster that and make sure that scientists can actually do SETI and engineers can actually deliver those deliverables. Some of the things that I do, or the most part that I do at the Allen Telescope Array, which is operated by the SETI Institute, is to perform searches for extraterrestrial in the radio. And I'll talk about this in a second. Where is the Allen Telescope Array? The Allen Telescope Array is located in California. So if you're ever in the area, please stop by. It's a really wonderful place to visit to start with. But also it's a hub for innovation and technology and science. And when I talk about radio, what do I mean? The electromagnetic spectrum is a large spectrum. Light is a wave. It's an electromagnetic wave. Our eyes are sensitive to a small portion of that electromagnetic light in general. That's the visible light. Now, if you look at the universe, how the universe looks like, in the band that our eyes are sensitive to, you'll end up with something that you see on the screen up there. This is the Milky Way galaxy. You can see the dust and the center of the Milky Way, and then the dust caused, the absorption. The black bands is basically the absorption due to the dust from the Milky Way. But then, if you extend the wave, if you extend the wavelength as to what you're trying to observe, you'll see something different in the radio. So radio light is basically the same as visible light. It's just it has a longer wavelength, or longer wavelength or shorter frequency. And so if you look at the universe in the radio, you end up seeing something like this. And if you have a slightly better telescope, you end up with and if you zoom into the center of the Milky Way, the radio tells us a lot about what the universe looks like. And this is one example of a very recent study that showed that the universe is actually really flaring up in radio. So, but let's go back to SETI. Why do we care about the radio and SETI in general? Is that our communication services, everything we use, like this microphone that I'm holding right now, is actually emitting radio waves. It's actually emitting radio light. And radio waves are one proxy for, it's a proxy for technology, it's a proxy for extraterrestrial technology. If you want to search for aliens, one way to do so is to try and eavesdrop, try and search for communication services that those alien technologies or those alien civilizations might be using. And so the biggest question that we try to ask at the Allen Telescope Array is, are we alone? This is the very first question. But as I mentioned as well, the universe is really buzzing in the radio spectrum. And so we can also look at supernovae when stars explode, or accreting black holes, alien worlds pretty much in that regard, but also neutron stars and others. And with that, I will hand over to Shelley.
Hi, I'm Shelley Wright. I'm a professor in physics and astrophysics, and I like to build instruments and cameras and spectrographs. And I've been working on optical SETI, so while I'll talk about radio SETI, I'm interested in visible light SETI, potential communications from lasers. That's a way we use also telecommunications. They're actually incredibly bright and would be easily seen hundreds, thousands of light years. We have the technology today. We could use a laser and send a signal across our galaxy and be easily seen by a small telescope. Now, here's the challenge. We don't know when they're sending the signal. We don't know where the signal is being sent. And this challenge is always true for SETI. And in SETI, what we try to do is get to something what we call all sky, all time. I mean, that's what we need to do. And if you extend this to Wael's talking about light, which is the fastest way to communicate, fastest speed limit in the universe, you need to build a system that's able to just monitor this. And I've been really interested in this project, and I've been developing a project to do this at optical wavelengths. So we wanted to build hundreds of telescopes at optical frequencies to look for what we call pulsed signals at visible light. And we needed this to be cost effective. So in my lab, we use, these are about 20 inches in size of a Fresnel lens. It's a big light bucket that empties back into some pretty expensive electronics here that's able to take pictures at nanoseconds. So every second, there's 1 billion images. And in those images, if we take hundreds of those, we can monitor the sky. So here's an example configuration that we're doing where you can look at thousands of square degrees instantaneously and look for a signal that maybe come at a nanosecond, a microsecond, a millisecond, or a second. And if you're interested in why that time domain, you can ask questions later. But this is a project we've commenced. We've done all the research and development to build this project. And we've started this project first at Lick Observatory, also in California. I'm at UC San Diego. And we're building a project where we start to build, this is at Lick Observatory where we're flying in here. We'll put 2 different sites here. Those are each going to have 24 telescopes. And why do you need 2 sites? We want 2 sites because if one telescope gets a signal, we're not going to call New York Times. Okay? You want a second telescope always. And that's a really important thing for SETI, is that we want an unambiguous signal. for that detection, okay? And so that's what we've done here, and you can kind of see zooming in across this, and I'll stop there.
Daniela?
Thank you. My name is Daniela DePaulis. I'm an artist, and I have been also part of what we call SETI committee, which is a group of specialists from various fields, including astronomy, anthropology, sociology, art. And this is because SETI is a very interdisciplinary science. So when we ask the question, are we alone? It's a question that doesn't only interests astronomers, but also people from other fields. So I've joined the committee in 2015, and I've been following SETI research quite closely for the past almost 10 years. And this is what led me, this long-term research around SETI eventually led me to create a global project called A Sign in Space, which is a form of theater. It's a cosmic theater, if you like. My background is in performing arts as well as visual arts, so I'm very informed. My practice is really informed by theater and performing arts. So when we think about a scenario, what we call in SETI first contact, meaning the first time we as humankind might meet another civilization from another planet, when we see these first contact scenarios in movies or science fiction books, typically the person, it's typically one person, one scientist, or a small group of scientists who tries to decode the detected extraterrestrial message. So I wanted to create a scenario which somehow was a bit different from the mainstream narrative, and Dr. Shelley Wright Jensen, who is a linguist, also by the way affiliated with the SETI Institute, I think she really imagined this scenario in 2019, and basically what she's suggesting is to give this extraterrestrial signal and message to everyone around the world, every life form possible, and let this life form interpret this detected signal. And so we did with A Sign in Space. We simulated the first contact scenario where we had a spacecraft of the European Space Agency, Trace Gas Orbiter. It's a spacecraft orbiting Mars. And on 24 May 2023, the spacecraft transmitted a simulated extraterrestrial message towards Earth, and we had 3 radio telescopes receiving the signal, including the Allen Telescope Array, the Medicina Radio Astronomical Antenna in Italy, and the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia. So we tried to simulate this scenario as realistically as possible, as if it was a real first contact scenario. And now there is a large community of citizen scientists, including astronomers, artists, people from all walks of life and many cultures, trying to decode this message received on 24th of May. And I think the most interesting part of the process is, so this is, by the way, the visualization of the data of the message. So now the community on Discord especially is trying to further decode and interpret this message. And I think what's super interesting about this is to see how human creativity is really flourishing. Even with a very small input. So the input in this case is just few dots on a black background, and yet we have received hundreds of different interpretations. And here I'm just showing some of them. So someone imagines this is a city as seen from an extraterrestrial civilization, or someone imagine this could be a whale song and maybe a sort of myth designed by extraterrestrial civilization around a collapsing galaxy. Someone converted this message into an origami. someone imagined it could be a message in Braille. And some people have engaged with sonification of the message and a lot of other interpretations. These are some of the words that are most used in the decoding process. So it's the decoding process has turned into a very long narrative on the Discord, which I would invite you to check if you're interested. And I think this quote is a great way to say why is SETI so important, especially in the time we are living. The research, the field of SETI is not only interesting as a science, but also as a reminder that we are really a planetary civilization, and SETI really allows us to work as a global entity, and this is especially important, I think, in the time we are living now. Thank you, Frank. Sorry.
Very good, thank you. Thank you very much. So we're gonna dig into these topics, of course, but before we go through the science and the art, I mean, you are three are kind of peculiar people. I'm sure that when we're taking an airplane and you tell people you work at SETI or you work for SETI and you're looking for aliens, people kind of react and ask questions. So my question is, why did you choose to work in this field of research, or what's your personal interest in this?
That's a question that I always get asked. What's a more profound question to ask as a civilization? Are we alone in this universe? Sometimes I consider myself lucky that I have gone through the training to try to understand how big this universe is, and it still boggles me that I step outside, I look at the stars, and I wonder how big the universe is, and I wonder if we are really alone in here. And in my opinion, this is one of the most fundamental, one of the most profound questions that need to be answered. And if we can answer it in any way, right? If we end up really being alone, that has, I'm sure, many impact on our everyday lives. But also, if we figure out that we are not alone, this also has another implication to our everyday life, which we're also going to discuss later on in this discussion. But I do truly believe that this is one question that humanity should be pursuing, and this is what really drives me to do what I do.
Okay, Shelley.
I'm not sure I could see that much better. That was really good. I mean, a lot of it stems from just innate curiosity as a little girl. I think most of us as a child, looking at the natural world, was curious about this question of, are we alone? And I carried that through my career, but I'll answer it now as an adult, which is what I love about SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, is it makes us think about the universe and exploring the universe in creative and unique ways. So I build instruments, for instance, and thinking about interstellar communication and thinking about how you would transmit that signal and how you would receive it is very different astrophysics than we traditionally do when we work with our telescopes. And I love that. I love thinking outside of the box and trying to challenge that question. How would you receive a signal? Okay, that's actually really hard to do. Okay, and then how to do that at different frequencies. So as a scientist, it's a big puzzle. But the root of the answer is it's just curiosity and of the universe itself.
Well, for me, it was really, I stumbled upon SETI by chance about 10 years ago at a conference similar to this one, and a friend took me to a meeting of this committee. And I was completely just blown away immediately, because it was the first time that I saw a group of people discussing science from a very diverse perspective. So as I said, there were humanists, scientists, creative people, just people interested in these very important, broad questions. And for me, it was really a revelation. I never realized that science could be so philosophically engaging. So, and as an artist, I of course saw immediately a lot of potential in the field of SETI, and I think more than any other science, SETI really reveals this transformative potential of science, which can be a very experiential, very transformative kind of work. So searching for another civilization not only looks outside, but also looks inside, makes us question a lot of human assumptions, knowledge, and it is really relevant because it kind of gives us this other perspective from outside as well. So it allows us to look at ourselves from another perspective, more than any other science, in my opinion.
Very good. Thank you for those answers. Yeah, I do believe that searching for alien civilization is kind of a way for us to understand ourselves better. That's been shown already over this past 20 years of developing instruments and creating this community. I have a question for the two scientists here, but I want you to put aside your science mind and tell us what your intuition or your feeling about the search. When do you think we're going to find this proof of existence, if there is any, of extraterrestrial civilization, and how? What instrument or what technology will be basically the one that will give us an answer to this question?
Are we putting money on this? Is there?
We can put bets, so...
I'll bet on the Allen telescope. Right?
Oh wow!
I'm
Surprise!
I'm a bit biased there. It's an interesting question. I don't go every day, thinking that I'll find aliens tonight. It's part of a really long journey. And to me, I feel I'm trying my best to add a really small sort of step forward, hopefully in the direction of finding ET. Any new technology that we can get our hands on, in terms both on hardware and software, that can aid us in taking another step further to enhancing and making our search a bit better. And so that's at least my personal goal in trying to do that. And so seriously, back to your question, I really do not know, because if we know what we're looking for, we wouldn't be sitting here and having this discussion. If we know what we need to use to find ET, so basically it's like going on playing roulette. Just don't focus on a single part of the game. Try to place your bet, place the money everywhere, and try to spread the search as much as possible, both on the radio and optical and other ways.
I think we're going to discover it serendipitously. So I do SETI, and we do a lot of observations of it. And I think we do have to search. But oftentimes in technology, we invent new means. For instance, LIGO. That was a great example where we now can discover gravitational waves, right? And also think about particle detectors. So my bet, we'll continue to do SETI, and we are really doing a lot of more advancements here. And we do it because we need to, right? We have to. Nobody else is, we have to do the search. But if I had to predict, it might be some spurious signal we get, and we say, what the heck is that? And we dig at it, and that's probably either a relic from old technology or some imprint of technology. For instance, we're doing a lot of research now. Think about James Webb Space Telescope. They're trying to take spectra of atmospheres of extrasolar planets. People talk about biosignatures, but in fact, technosignatures, a technological imprint, a chemical imprint in that atmosphere, would be 100 times brighter.
So it's possible that we have already detected this signal Maybe it's somewhere in a database of some instrument, and people have not yet seen it. Okay. So if you have time, you can go through the database of the Allen Telescope Array. I don't know if they're public, but there is a lot of database, public database, and maybe you will be the one finding alien. If you're smart, you have the right code, or you know the right way to search for it.
It's absolutely open source, and I've got terabytes of data. If people are volunteering here, I'm happy to take volunteers.
Okay, we have a lot of volunteers. Look, all of these people want to do it. Great. Question for you, Daniela, because I like this artistic perspective because it gives us kind of a different view. We scientists who are searching for aliens know that this is going to be a long race, a marathon probably. How do you think we can keep the engagement in SETI alive through generations? Maybe we're not going to find alien today. Maybe we're going to find alien in 200 years. How do you think we're going to make sure that the young people, the ones who are not born yet, will be engaged in the search?
Yes, that's a very important question, and I think SETI is a relatively new science. So it was founded in the 70s, and in those years we have made a lot of progress. So it's difficult to imagine when we will receive a signal, because it might happen tomorrow, when it might happen in 100 years. So it's important that the science evolves together with us humans. So as you said, we might already have the data of a signal, but we don't have yet the maybe right approach. We don't have the right software to look at it. So I think it will be part, this discovery of SETI will really be part of our transformation as a society, as a humankind. And by following the development, for example, in neuroscience, in technology, and in other fields, we might be able to use all these new informations to understand better the data that we have already gathered, the data we will gather in the future. So it will involve different generations. So younger people will have to work with older people, will probably harness collective memory, collective imagination. And also, in my opinion, I'm sure you will agree on that, young people should really join the search of extraterrestrial intelligence as soon as possible. So they could already start when they're really small children, because they might be the lucky ones who might be finally experiencing this first contact scenario. We don't know, but we hand to them this research, and they will interpret it and transform it according to their era, the culture of their era.
Right. Do you want to add something on this topic? Yourself, or as a professor in university, how are you going to keep this ULab alive, or the funding alive?
Well, it's kind of a great question asking about it is a multi-generational search, right? Because if people ask, when do you stop? Right, it's been 60 years since the first search at radio wavelengths. But we're such at our technological infancy, you kind of should never stop. You should do, this could be 100 years, it could be a couple centuries. The distances between interstellar stars are pretty vast, so it takes a long time to get a signal to and from. I mean, this is a long-term pen pal, if you're gonna send a signal and receive a signal, send a signal back. But my point for this is that 20 years ago, when I was a student, SETI was taboo, right, in the science community. I was told as a student not to go into this field. There was a rare Earth hypothesis back then. And so I think there's a lot of cultural aspects and societal aspects of the search for life, and in particular, the search for intelligent life, where both the science community and the public, need to take this head on. And so why this is important for education and multi-generational is to teach our kids, when they're excited about aliens, that it's exciting. They should be excited about aliens. And if they're excited to do the search, they should also explore that. So this is a passing of torch from generations.
Well,
And I would also add to that the search for ET extends beyond a scientific or just the scientific endeavor that a bunch of astrophysicists do. I've faced that all the time when I introduce myself as an astrophysicist before saying I'm SETI. The first question is, have you found aliens before people even know that I do that? And so it just reminds me that
they don't ask you if you find if you study galaxy and so on. They ask you first for aliens.
Well, it's one of the first questions. It's about aliens, which is which I find really intriguing. It's a question that we share from among scientists that are following the doing that as a scientific endeavor, but also the public in general being engaged in aliens. I mean, when ask any children, they'll be the first thing they think about space is aliens. That's a so it's a scientific question that extends beyond the scientific community, and it's something that the taboo that was 10 and 15 or 20 years ago is not existent anymore, or at least is part of being fixed as time goes.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify this story of the taboo, because I also experienced this, working 25 years in this field. And what truly changed the perspective I think, of the search is the fact that we now know that there is 100 million or billions of planets in our galaxy. And there is at least 300 million of them that could be like our own planet, potentially habitable, same size and so on. And these have changed drastically the perspective that we have about our own galaxy. If there is so many Earth-like planet like Earth, there is possibly life over there. Microbiological life, very simple life, but maybe one of these planets became lucky, I don't know, we can talk about that more, and has a technological intelligent civilization like ours. So that's the reason the taboo, I think, went away. It's because of the discovery of those exoplanets. Okay, so let's now assume that we found one of you, Wael, Shelley, or you together, you found this signal. What's going to happen? Daniela, you're member of the SETI Permanent Committee. So tell us what this committee has been working on.
Yes, there is a protocol of post-detection, which I think was developed in the 90s, and now it's in a review stage. And the protocol basically asserts that if there is a discovery of an extraterrestrial signal, scientists should communicate with leaders of various governments around the world, should discuss the discovery, and eventually this discovery will be made public. So there will be a discussion amongst these world leaders on whether it is a good idea to release this information to the public or not. Now, however, this protocol seems very outdated, and as it has been renewed. I don't think they've published yet the new version, but I think it is mostly focused on public engagement. And also, I think it's finally taking into account the fact that now we are a much more connected society than 30 years ago, and of course the media are now much more eager to cover these kind of stories. So for sure, the process of releasing this information to the public will not follow the protocol, but I think it's more an instrument for the scientists to feel that they are in control, but probably it will not go according to this script.
Yeah. We all know scientists, and they love talking about their discoveries. So as soon as someone finds a signal, I would say that in one hour later, we will know about it. What about you guys? Do you have a protocol, or are you going to follow it, or what's the plan?
Protocol. So at the observatory, we have a red, box that we can go to break a glass and then pick up a phone and call. But that's that's not really the case. I take kind of the boring aspect here of things because I look at data on a daily basis and I see how much hard it is to unambiguously say that there is something astrophysical in our data. Whether if it's ET or something else, it's very hard to detect signals coming from outer space. The reason behind that is interference, from our own technology affects our data, and it's kind of prevalent. And so to be able to detect a astrophysical signal, whether it's ET or not, one, it's fairly hard to start with, but also if we end up doing that, there will be a scientific investigation as to whether this signal is actually expected from ET or not, and whether nature can produce that signal on its own. And I think that would take a while. So between the detection itself and calling it the president, there'll be a few years in my at least prediction, but
few years.
Yes,
that's a long debate.
Yeah,
a few years where people will observe it again and analyze the data again and argue about it between the scientific community.
Exactly, especially if the signal doesn't repeat, right? Okay. If it repeats, then we have a better chance to confirm and validate it. So that's another way. But we want to use multiple telescopes, right? As Shelley mentioned, having multiple elements that can detect the same signal at the same time. That's also great. But also figuring out whether from a theoretical perspective, nature alone cannot produce that signal. And yeah.
So what about BLC1? Some people here remember, like 2 years ago, there was an announcement that we had potentially detected a signal. The name of the signal is BLC1, and then another paper was published with 8 potential radio signals. So what is that?
So BLC1 stands for Breakthrough Listen Candidate 1. Breakthrough Listen is a program to search for ET that's also doing a great job by piggybacking, what we call piggybacking, basically getting data from multiple telescopes around the world and doing SETI with that data set. What made that candidate or candidate signal interesting is that it passed so many tests that astronomers usually do to figure out whether that signal is real or not. So it passed so many of these tests. All of these checkboxes were being checkboxed, but at the same time, people don't want to cry wolf, right? That's the last thing you want to do as a SETI astronomer. Just make sure that you're absolutely, it's absolutely crucial to make sure that what you're seeing is actually real, or at least is not human related. It's not any of our interference or any of our communication services. So that signal was particularly interesting because it ticked all the boxes, but then after some scientific investigation, turns out that it wasn't what we were hoping for, ET, but it was still published because it was interesting on its own. The fact that it really made it through all of our filters, all of our algorithmic designed filters to make sure, or masks to make sure that what we're detecting is real.
Okay. Pretty sure we're going to have questions about this. What about you? Are you going to follow the protocol, Shelley, in your lab?
Well, I think BLC1 was a great example where science worked. So repeatability is all about science. And if we don't have a repeat signal, that's going to be very challenging. Our protocol is to immediately publish. So there's something called the astronomy telegram. And if you get a signal, so of course every internal project, every experiment has candidates that we have to vet. Right? You may get something, we have to look at it. Is it noise? What is the source? Oh, it was something it was a satellite or something, right? We do that process. But let's say we actually get to something that's like, whoa, this looks interesting. Now, if that signal is persistent, that has to be released immediately. Because other telescopes around the world, and including if it's that darn interesting, space-based, need to turn to it and look at it. Maybe it's something new astrophysically. right? But this is science. So from our perspective, at least our team, and I think most science teams' perspective, is it becomes public. Now, the real question is, what does the media do?
Yeah.
Right? So in this case, the media will probably be like, scientists may have discovered aliens. Pops on the news page, probably seen it before, right? That's going to happen while the scientists are running around trying to figure out what's going on. And that news cycle is going to happen for a few weeks until maybe we figure out it wasn't an alien and it fizzles like everything else in the news media after a couple of weeks. Or we're like, actually, this does look really weird. Folks, this is weird. I think that will get out. And maybe then it's in a frenzy as well in the media. And then if it's real, what happens next?
But that was my question, my next question. What is going to happen next? What's going to happen when you are...
Yeah, we got a short attention span around here lately. I'm not sure. So
what are you going to do, you on a personal level? Let's assume we detect this signal, it's persistent, you kind of, let's go back to the science.
this is great for Daniela's project was really a beautiful thing here, which is deciphering a signal. And in the SETI community, you know, almost you could think about it this way, detecting the signal might be the easiest thing we could possibly do. Saying, yes, this looks artificial. All the hard work comes later because if there's information packed in that signal, how in the heck do you decipher it, right? And that will be a science and an engineering and an art as well. And that part of that process could take years.
Yeah, I want to clarify that there is 3 people on this planet that know the meaning of the sign in space, and Daniela is one of them. She's not going to give you any clue, so don't try. But yeah, from this experience, this artistic experience, what did you learn about how how we're gonna react after detecting a signal? Can you tell us some input about?
Yes, I think we are really all experiencing the unfolding of this decoding process on Discord, the people who have been following it, including yourself, I think, Frank. But so there are very skilled people on Discord. I don't like to use the word smart because I don't think it's about that. It's really about having certain skills, and so there are people who have scientific, technical, creative skills, all the skills you need to decode the potential signal from an extraterrestrial civilization. And yet, even although these people are working collectively, independently, so they collaborate and also they work on their own. So they try different methodologies, all kinds of ideas, all kinds of ways of decoding, and yet after 9 months, they are still debating about what could be the solution, the actual interpretation of this message. One of the problems, I think, is because if you ever receive an extraterrestrial message, you will have no reference points to really know if you are on the right path for decoding that message. I think that would be extremely challenging, even if you are actually on the right path. You simply have no way to understand that, because we might be facing technical, physical, or scientific in general understanding of a concept that we have simply not grasped on. So there could be many, many challenges that I think we cannot even envision right now. And I think it will be a really interesting process. But of course, there is also the question of how the global population will react to such a discovery. Because while we were developing this project, there were some anthropologists who really warned about the possibility that some people might panic. We have seen this in some theatrical enactment of this first contact scenario, notoriously War of the Worlds. So this is also a big question, I think, for especially the anthropologists in SETI research. How people would react to such a radical discovery. I mean, this is way beyond anything else we've discovered so far.
Well, we asked this question in this survey, so I hope you're going to take the time to tell us how you will react when you know that we have found extraterrestrial civilization. Well, do you want to add something about this topic of the public reaction, maybe? Or?
Yeah, for sure. And in the context of Daniela's project, it was pleasantly surprising to see the engagement from the public. And we're talking about hundreds of people, even thousands maybe of people.
1.2 million download of the data.
Yeah, and I mean, the Discord channel was full of people trying to, skilled people trying to really figure out what that was, and they already started it by knowing that this signal was actually simulated, right? We knew beforehand that this is, Daniela, worked really hard to put that signal on the trace gas orbiter and send it back to us, and so everyone out there knew that this was a simulated message. But yet still, there were thousands of people, 1.2 million downloads, just trying to figure out what that signal was. And so, extrapolating from that, I feel we are in a really good position to put out a data set that we think that might have a particular signal in it, and leave it to you guys to figure out what is in it.
Aye. Yeah, I would like to add that we have intelligent species on our planet. Whales are intelligent, they communicate, and it's only recently that we're starting paying attention to that. And the SETI Institute published a paper last week or a month ago, where basically they reported the first kind of communication between human being and whales. It took 20 years to finally understand what they say, hello, and stuff like that. So it will take a long time to do the same for extraterrestrial civilization. Okay, so let's assume we have a signal. We understand the content. They tell us, hey, we are whatever, or we are living on this planet, and we want to talk to you. What are we going to tell them? And who's going to take the decision of what we're going to tell them? Who wants to answer to this question first?
Well, I think we should answer that there is no protocol about how to send signals, which we call METI. It's called Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Many scientists have signed letters to the United Nations to suggest protocols on this, but quite honestly, it's probably going to be the Wild West, because signals have been sent on behalf of humanity. There was, of course, a famous signal sent with the Arecibo telescope in 1977 to a globular cluster. And I love thinking about that signal, Daniela, for which we sent. But there's also people with means, with deep pockets, that can use big radio telescopes to send a signal. So if we get a signal and we know the coordinates, the address of that other star, potential planet around that other star, I think it will become very interesting to see what happens, because I think there will be a lot of people that say, who does communicate for humanity? And it's not just humanity. As you just mentioned, there's lots of other life forms here on Earth. It's Earth collectively. That question still stands, right? Whether we have a signal or not, that question is still here with us in this room, because people are messaging right now and sending their signals. We leak signals. We can't help the leak signals, but people are doing directional signals. There was a famous one, maybe it wasn't that famous, but there was someone with means that decided that they were going to just broadcast their favorite heavy metal band, all right, using a large telescope to some nearby stars. So I think this ethical question is here, whether we get the signal and we send it to the exact address or neighborhood that sent us the signal for our pen pal, because right now people on Earth are representing us and sending signals now.
What will you send? Well, what will be the response to the signal? What kind of information?
I'm not a heavy rock fan, so maybe I'll go for pop or something. My personal perspective is we are still very young as a species. We're still figuring, we're still baby stepping around, figuring out what the universe is. And so my personal perspective is, let's be quiet for a second and just take a step back and make sure there's one collective understanding of our place in the universe without before really stepping into it. But as Shelley mentioned, we are already leaking radiation, right? So we are unintentionally really doing METI in one way or another. We're using cell phones, we're using satellites, we're using TV broadcast stations. That's already happening, and so yeah, it's a tough question.
I'm gonna say what I think we should send. I'm gonna choke you here maybe. But I think we should send our LLM, we should send our ChatGPT. The entire ChatGPT should be sent to these aliens. So
The entire internet, all of it.
The algorithm itself, so they learn how to talk. They don't talk to us directly, they talk to our representation as a machine. So this way they have instant information about ourselves. And then they will send us the ChatGPT and we will know about them. That would be the best way, I think, to exchange, to have interspecies communication. But maybe it's too much. But we see. What about you? What do you think?
It's really hard. Well, first of all, going back to what Wael said, I think there is a difference between, yes, leaking information and communication. So I think in this case we're more discussing what are we going to communicate, assuming there can be such a thing. We have also, of course, to keep into account the fact that there will be thousands or more years before they receive a reply. But within the limits of what is possible, I think as many people as possible from around the world should also participate in this effort. So, in my opinion, it should be the entire humanity from various cultures to decide what to reply. Because also it's a really big act of taking responsibility. It's, I wouldn't want to be the person replying because I think you take a huge responsibility doing so.
Yeah, you take it for the entire species, intelligent species of the planet, not only us, as you mentioned, but other species as well.
And across generations, because maybe our future humans will have to deal with the consequences. So I think it should be a global effort.
All right. Good. We're going to take some questions. I'm sure there is questions here. So why don't you just stand and you go to the microphone, and we're going to take the time to answer to questions. Maybe you can introduce yourself if you're feeling like it.
Hey, I'm Mark Sternberg. I'm a huge fan of SETI. I have been since, God, I think I was in high school and I was installing it secretly on all the computers in my high school. SETI at home, if you remember that. I just kind of wanted to know, so a lot of stuff has been coming out in the last year. We had whistleblowers, David Grush, people talking about having UFOs. We've seen the videos and stuff. One of the questions that's sort of been coming up a lot, you probably know Jacques Vallée, and he said one of his biggest disappointments would be if these UFOs that we're seeing, or UAPs, were actually just like interdimensional, right? Not like ET out there somewhere, but actually just like interdimensional. He said for him that would be a huge disappointment. Would that be a disappointment for you, or do you still see that all of this work is just so incredibly important and has all these other positive externalities? And then also, if they were interdimensional, for example, through, I don't know, projections or portals or whatever they're talking about, would there be something that you could detect from that, or would you tailor your search to something that would give off a signature related to that?
Someone want to answer to this?
I'm glad you're a SETI at Home fan. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for doing all the screensavers. So unidentified anomalous phenomenon is the word Congress is using and other people. We have no idea, right? Interdimensional, man, that would be really interesting. I don't know if I would be disappointed. That would be pretty rad if that was the answer. There's a lot happening within UAPs right now. What you asked about what you would look for, so I'll address that question. A lot of the work currently at least in scientists in the civilian space, look at videos like this and try to look at things that look anomalous in acceleration, right? And this is challenging because the data that is released or sent or put out in the public, at least, you don't have a lot of information about how the picture was taken. Is it also on a moving vehicle, which often it is? How quickly was a picture taken? How far away was that object? But to answer this question of anomalous is whether it has an anomalous velocity or an acceleration, that kind of either anomalous to what the technology we have today, or even anomalous if you're getting into interdimensional, anomalous to the physics as we know it.
Okay, we have 5 minutes, so we're gonna take quick question, quick answer, okay? Let's do that.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Ben, I'm from Germany. I have a rather philosophical question perhaps. Is it really a smart thing to send signals? Because you might know a famous Chinese science fiction author, Cixin Liu. He actually compared this to blowing a whistle in a dark forest. So we are constantly blowing the whistle in the dark forest. So if there's someone out, some kind of intelligent life, it has a strategic advantage because it knows that there is someone. So if that is the only knowledge that he, she, or it has, then it comes perhaps down to the basic need of survival. So isn't there a rather huge possibility that this goes south for us, like end in a bad way?
Wow, 1 minute to answer to that. Who wants to take the risk? 1 minute.
Ooh, 1 minute. Okay, I'll try. The dark forest theory exists, and we understand. It's basically, you're a hunter in a forest, and you don't know what's out there. You don't want to make yourself known or seen. And I absolutely agree with you. Personally, as I mentioned earlier, we are young in this universe. We are really young. We still don't understand many things that make up the universe. And so, from my perspective, there is a possibility that things might turn south really quickly. And so we have to be really responsible when it comes to, when it comes to dealing with cosmic, powers.
But we don't send signals up here on the panel. You know that, right? Okay.
Maybe it's a natural evolution of any technological, biological civilization to be facing other of this civilization in the future. And that's the way you evolve. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Leah Ramsey from the Space Telescope Science Institute. And I was wondering what you think with gravitational wave science and multi-messenger astronomy and how that might relate to the search for life.
Shelley, you want to take that?
I love this question.
I know, that's why I say.
I mean, everything we're doing here right now, just to get to this, like astrophysics and astronomers, we use light, radio light, X-ray light, visible light to study the universe. We also use particle physics, right? So we detect neutrinos and high energy particles here on Earth, right? That's our other means. And then the other way that this is amazing, is gravitational waves, right? Which was predicted from general relativity, that mass, right, interacts with space-time and it creates a wake. And we detect that now with the LIGO facility with neutron stars merging, black holes, stellar mass black holes merging. And that's fascinating. This field is called multi-messenger astrophysics, which is light, gravitational waves, particles, gamma rays, all of these things. And what's interesting about that is to think about if we're in our technological infancy, perhaps they're using another messenger carrier, because it also travels at the speed of light. It's a fantastic thing to think about. Do we have anything to type maybe to get to your question? I don't know if there is a paper now about how to look at anomalous signals in the LIGO data, for instance. That I've heard it discussed at conferences. I've never seen anything written up on it. But that might be interesting, getting to Franck's thing about archival data. I've also been curious about this in terms of neutrinos as well, although it's so hard to detect those little guys. But things like that, to go into archival data or even thinking about how to use those facilities in the future.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Che. I live here My original question was related to the last one, so I'll ask a different one instead. How do you think that artificial intelligence, do you foresee that having an impact on the search for extraterrestrial life, maybe formulating METI or analyzing the data that we can observe here on Earth?
Do you want to take that,
Take that?
Daniela? Or?
Yes, AI might play a really crucial role in this. And I say that from a perspective that artificial intelligence, at least for now, is one of our techniques that can be highly or kind of unbiased to what we're trying to look for, right? You can train an algorithm to say, I want to find things that do not look like A, B, and C, and let it sift through the data and, in a way, unbiasedly get your results. And so, yes, we as humans are biased in terms of what we are trying to search for. If we leave it for an artificial intelligence algorithm that can, kind of, in a way, think outside the box for us, I feel that that's a huge, improvement in sort of searching the parameter space.
So I have two comments here. It's very likely that the first things that will detect alien signals would probably be a machine, in my mind, because of the complexity. Now I have a question for you, Daniela. Is there anybody who have tried to use artificial intelligence to decode the signal?
Yes, they have tried several times, but we don't avail, unfortunately. I think from what I see, the interpretations they came up with through their own experience and knowledge is much more interesting and actually closer to somehow the so-called solution than what the AI came up with. And also, I don't know, I am not an AI expert in any way, but isn't AI also a bit of a copy, a strange copy of ourselves? Or how can AI help us to see outside of the box? I'm not sure, but I don't really follow AI developments. Maybe we can discuss this later. I'll be curious to know. I think I'm missing out.
Okay, go ahead.
If we have time, just a quick question. My name is Andrew. I actually work in banking, so this is a fascinating conversation to be able to sit in on. One of the things that has been sort of thematically consistent is that, we're leaking, that you've talked about has been, we're sort of leaking our own radiation, right? We are, radio signals and satellites and so forth. If there was a SETI Institute in somewhere else in the galaxy looking for us, how easy are we to see?
Oof, that's a lot of answer to this. Wael, radio first.
Radio first. It depends. It could be really hard, depending on how funded the SETI Institute there is, and what sort of. So with current technology that we have right now, we can detect a Shelley mentioned Arecibo. We can detect an Arecibo signal maybe 10, 20, maybe 100 parsec away, which is a unit we use in astronomy, which is fairly good. And this is again with a technology that's only 60, 70 years old, which is really tiny in the age of the universe. So yes, it could be easy depending on how much technology and how much advancement you have in that institute. Detecting ourselves there on that scale can from just leakage with the current technology is kind of hard, but I don't see a reason 20 or 30 years from now that should be with space-based radio telescopes could be fairly become fairly easy.
You want to answer to this for the laser specifically? Do you have your methods calculation?
We're not sending but the easiest way to detect life here on Earth is in our atmosphere. So if you even take like a James Webb Space Telescope and put it in at 1,000 light years in our own galaxy, we can detect bio and technosignatures in our atmosphere. So presumably if they had our technology today in the 21st century and they were looking at Earth and taking a spectrum, they would know that, they literally would know life is here, and they would know we have technological imprints in our atmosphere. Now, just one premise we haven't talked about, just 2 seconds here, is that if we do detect life, and they're probably way older. They're not in their infancy. Mm-hmm. So they probably have way more advanced telescopes than we do.
Because there is a lot of stars which are way older than our own star, especially in the center of the galaxy. The star is significantly older, like 10 billion years. So this civilization may be extremely advanced. Person asked a question. There is a new article which has been published by this group called ETH Live. It's an interferometer, and they show that they can detect Earth at 100 light years from us. So it's possible to observe our own planet, or we're using technology that we know at the moment. You want to take?
Hi, my name is Eduardo. I'm an astronomy student from Brazil with a focus on astrobiology. And in astrobiology, we take a lot of care to not impart the Earth life biases to the alien life search. What biases are being imparted on the search for alien intelligence? How can they hinder this search?
Wow. In 1 minute, that's going to be a tough answer. Who want to take that?
Thank you for doing astrobiology. That's awesome. It's a great topic. Our challenge is we only know what we know, right? And we know what our 21st century technology is, right? So we use radio wavelengths. We use optical wavelengths. We know how we do telecommunications at radio and how we do it at optical. So we bias our receiving techniques to how we can transmit it, right? Because I'm not 300 years from now knowing how to use gravitational wave communication. So it's a bias we can't get around, right? We can try to think about, again, how to use experiments and how to use things uniquely to think out of the box. But we can only do what we know.
Can I also add just briefly that also it's not only for astronomy, but for other sciences. I think for me, one of the questions is, what is life? What is consciousness? What is intelligence? So this is why we have to keep looking at this question from the interdisciplinary perspective, because if we might be able to answer these questions, what is intelligence? We might be able to also look at extraterrestrial intelligence in a different way. And so this will be quite actually radically important, very cognitive revolution, if you like, to be able to answer these other fundamental questions.
So one of the reasons the SETI Institute has an artist in residence program is because we realize that we are looking for life as we know it. So someone came and one day and say, maybe we should have the most imaginative and creative mind to work as well with us. So they push us in a direction to find different life. And we find that artists are the best people to do that for some reasons. So that's the reason we have an artist in residence program at the SETI Institute. Okay. I have one final question for you, short because we're late, I know. How people can contribute to the field of science of SETI? How can anybody here in this room can basically be part of this project, which is a big one, basically, a big project for humanity?
Support in terms of letting us know that you actually want us to be continuing to work on what we want to work on.
So send you emails?
Send your representative emails.
Exactly. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, basically, we want to be supported in many in many ways, and one of the ways you could do is reach out to your local politicians, and then make sure that SETI is a field that needs to be supported. But also there's a lot of citizen science experiments out there that you can. Someone mentioned SETI at home. Something similar to that that are out there, and you can contribute either by your eyes looking at data or your computer floating point operations. So basically download the software and let it run in the background, and you can help us do our science that way.
I think, yeah, you said it nicely. Talking about it, right? You're a congressional person. I mean, SETI has never really, it's been taboo and unfunded for many decades. If you're a teacher, teach about it. Please teach about it in the classroom and take away that giggle factor. Allow kids to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I would add that what I think everyone who asks, are we alone, is already doing some form of SETI research. And what I learned through my project is that this question resonates with many, many people around the world, people who are maybe not related to the SETI Institute, but maybe live in many different places around the globe. So it's such a fundamental question that really shows why the field of SETI should continue working to answer this question, because it is so relevant to us as a species.
Hey, thank you very much for the three of you. Thank you for the public here to stay until the end of this conversation. Maybe next year we're going to have a South by Southwest and we're going to talk about the signal. Maybe there will be a signal. Bye-bye. Thanks.